Okay, hello everyone, George Webb here, following up on our water tower story, our Clairton story as well, our Clairton, C-L-A-I-R-T-O-N. If you remember in my earlier episode this morning, we drew a line basically between the two people that were victims, these trees being the victims. We traced a line and went to this water tower area, not over toward the low shooter perch of Crooks. So indicating a second shooter. We didn't really go into much into the victims here. We didn't go into the victims much, but one of them, well, it turns out there was a whole Pittsburgh police section. There was a whole Pittsburgh police section to the event, at the Trump event, 10 officers being sent from the Pittsburgh section. And what's even more interesting is those folks trained at the Clairton facility. Not only did the Pittsburgh contingent that was injected into this Butler event train there, but also ICE, the folks that do the border patrol and so forth, and then also DHS trained at that facility. And not only that, but also simulations were run at that facility for this shooter incident. For, again, this idea of live exercise at the Clairton facility. Not only that, there's ties with Hollywood to the Clairton facility. Deer Hunter, we talked about in the last film, was actually filmed in Clairton at the Clairton facility. And we know that there are Hollywood connections. We know there are Hollywood connections, as you remember, with the Rails Brothers. The Rails Brothers winning winning an Academy Award. And again, the connections to Robert De Niro and the Rails Brothers keep coming back in our story over and over again with these CIA stories, these CIA crime mob stories, the partnership of the CIA and the mob. So here we have more metadata, which talks about this scenario, this two-shooter scenario being rehearsed potentially at the Clairton facility. One, of course, is going to be Crooks here on this position. This actually could have been a place you could have done the rehearsal if we would just go down this road a little bit and go 140 yards out from the corner of that building, and then this water tower being another 50 yards beyond. This actually could have been a place where you could have done a rehearsal as well. I don't know if this kind of configuration exists in Clairton, but the key here again is we see these live exercises that tend to give us a premonition or a foreshadowing, foretelling of what's going to happen in the future. And by looking at the live exercises that are run, we can get an idea pretty clearly of what may happen in terms of real life events. So we know Crooks is involved in Clairton. We now know these 10 police officers where the victims are. We now know these 10 police officers where the Pittsburgh section. And it looks like the section that wasn't Trump's section, but the Pittsburgh section was the old scores section. It was where there was some old scores to be settled. Could have even been Compatore. His uncle Fruman, his step-uncle Fruman, was related to Mark Fruman of the OJ trial from yesterday's in Savor, Pennsylvania, through the memorial service. We now know that his uncle, step-uncle, was related to Mark Fruman with the OJ trial. So that's another one of those mass formation psychosis events. Again, I don't want to pick on the Rails Brothers being a part of this Mossad mafia or a part of the mafia that creates these mass formation psychosis events and then turns around and makes movies about them to capitalize on them financially. But they just won the Oscar, So I'm not, we're not going too far here in our extension with the connection to the Chicago mob and Korshak. The other interesting twist to all of this story, in addition to the rehearsals at the Clairton facility and the old scores that seem to be settled in the Pittsburgh section, we have these four of the motorcycle cops are wounded. So it should be easy to get their names. And again, you have this kind of cook's broth or too many cooks in the kitchen confusion that seems to be the recurring theme in all of these shootings. You know, he said, she said, and that's kind of the excuse that tends to be put out with these events. We'll keep following the events here, but the connections just keep coming up. The Rails brothers with the Danaher, you remember the pump and dump, they're getting into all of the detection technologies around COVID with all the pump and dump schemes with Danaher, and now we have crossover between the Danaher executives and the American Glass research executives with knowledge. That building that the shooter, Crooks, shot from, which is now being an FBI crime site where they're going into all the computers and extracting all the information from the computers, all the research with these self-extracting thumb drives, that was just sold 4 months ago to Raytheon. So this is, there's some industrial espionage going on in the background here as well. We'll keep following it for you here in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Okay, let's just find it all out very easily. Okay, you go to the sharpshooters. They survived. They weren't shot. Who ordered you to not shoot the shooter that hit Trump? Then go to that person. Who told you to tell the sharpshooters to not shoot? Okay, that's step one. Follow the chain of command and get them. I don't think that's going to be too hard, right? Part two, why wasn't that building covered? The police say it was the Secret Service's responsibility. Okay, why and who was it specifically that lied to the police and said, we have it covered? We need to know. Then you go to that person. Who told you to do that? Mayorkas? Biden? Who? Someone up the chain of command. And then we got him. That's it. So simple. I hope you agree.